Hey y'all, welcome to Peyton Energetics. I'm Peyton, and in today's video, we're going to be talking about Orion starseeds. Now, starseeds from the Orion system are one of the types of starseeds that are a little less common. So you may be less likely to know an Orion starseed than some of the other star races that we're more familiar with, like the Pleiadians or the Sirians. But we have a lot of Orion energy on the planet right now. And so it's very important for us to understand the Orion history, who the Orions were, and get to know their starseeds. So in today's video, we're going to be talking a little bit about the history of the Orion system, which is a very important part of our galactic history. Then we're going to take a look at some of the characteristics of Orion starseeds. And then we're going to finish up by talking about some of the unique struggles that Orion starseeds may face. Because as we have talked about in several of these videos, every star race and every type of starseed has its own strengths and its own weaknesses. So we're going to talk about some of the things that can be struggles or obstacles for some of the Orion starseeds. Now, before we jump into talking about Orion starseeds, let's take a moment and talk about the Orions themselves, because this is, as I said, a very important chapter in our galactic history. So according to the guides, and if you guys have watched my videos, you know that I am a Pleiadian channel. So most of my information comes from a guide team that is primarily Pleiadian and Sirian. So you'll notice that my information comes from a Pleiadian perspective most of the time. So according to the Pleiadians, the Orion system is part of our galactic history that we need to understand as Earth humans going through the ascension process, because many of the things we are struggling with on Earth right now stem from the Orion system. So if you have not heard of the Orion system, if this is something that is new to you, the Orion system, of course, comes from the constellation of Orion. That is what we're talking about when we talk about the Orions. And the Orion system, throughout our galactic history, has been one of the darkest and most challenging systems, the guides say, in the history of the galaxy. So what happened in the Orion system is important for us to understand as we are on the verge of ascending and rejoining our galactic family. So according to the Pleiadians, the Orion system was a system of very intense polarity, oppression, and manipulation. It was the darkest system, the darkest time in our galactic history, according to many versions of galactic history. There was a lot of oppression in the Orion system, and there was a very intense period of battles between the Orion Empire and the Resistance, who were trying to free the Orion system from the oppression of the Empire. Now, the Orion system was a system, according to the guides, that was primarily governed by or led by negatively oriented grays and reptilians. So this is a big component of what has happened and transpired in the history of the Orion system. And the guides tell us it was one of the most oppressed systems to ever exist in our galaxy. The guides say that what we have going on Earth right now is child's play, is kindergarten compared to what happened in the Orion Empire. So we are talking about a very challenging, painful part of our galactic history. And so the question comes up then, how is this relevant to Earth? Because the Orion system, for all of its challenges over many thousands, if not millions of years, did eventually integrate and move into the light. So the Orion system has ascended. It was just a very long, painful trip to get there. And what starts to bring Earth into the Orion story is that as the ascension of Orion was nearing, And many of the particularly negatively oriented factions saw the writing on the wall and didn't want to integrate and move into the light. What happened is they fled the system and came to Earth. So that is what has, in a way, dragged Earth into some of the conflict energy that was very prevalent in the Orion system, is because many of the most negatively oriented Orion beings escaped the system to avoid moving into the light, to avoid ascending, and came bringing their negativity to Earth. So as the Pleiadians explain, here on Earth, with much of the oppression, much of the polarity, the conflict, the deception that we are dealing with on Earth here, is courtesy of our history with the Orion system. So as humans, some of the darkness and polarity that we are working through as a collective right now, and there's quite a bit of that we are dealing with, is us attempting to integrate the imbalanced Orion energy that migrated to Earth. So the guides like to say that we on Earth are working out a lot of karma, a lot of the negative energy, the extreme polarity and conflict that came from the Orion system. So as we hear the history of the Orion system, it can be tempting to write it off as just a very dark system that brought its darkness to Earth. So all of the Orion starseeds must be dark as well. But that is a complete misinterpretation of the Orion starseed. But because the Orion system did eventually integrate and move into the light, and the Pleiadians like to say that it took something like only 0.02% of the population to integrate all of that polarity. So it took a very small percentage of the Orions to turn everything around. So when we talk about the Orion system and Orion starseeds, we know that we are talking about beings and energies that came from a history of very deep polarity. But they did manage to move through that and integrate that. And the guides tell us that many Orions, many Orion councils are actually working now to help Earth through the ascension process. So don't mistake hearing the word Orion for meaning that something or someone is necessarily negatively oriented. It's always important to remember when we talk about the Orions or when we talk about Orion starseeds that the Orions have integrated. They have ascended, they have moved into the light. And so that era of darkness and oppression is now over. So let's talk now about Orion starseeds. Now, an Orion starseed is not necessarily dark or negative because they come from or have origins in the Orion system. That's something that is very, very important to understand when we're talking about Orion starseeds. So Orion starseeds, like most starseeds, are here on Earth to support Earth through the ascension process. And they are very powerful starseeds. So while this may be a type of starseed that you don't encounter as often as some others, they are so fascinating and have such interesting energies when you do meet them or have a chance to interact with them. So right now, let's take a look at some of the characteristics that some Orion starseeds have. Now, as I say in all of these videos, as we talk about the traits of a starseed race or the characteristics, we're talking only in generalities. We are talking in broad brushstrokes and in trends. So this doesn't mean that every Orion starseed will have these qualities. You could be an Orion starseed and not have any of them, and that is perfectly okay. We are just talking about some of the things that we see more commonly in a particular starseed race than we might see in the average human population. So always keep that in mind and take it if it resonates with you, ignore it if it doesn't. Now, one of the fascinating things that you will notice about many Orion starseeds is that they are good at everything. These are starseeds who tend to be very resourceful. They can work with anything that's on hand. They are clever. They are smart. They are thrifty. So your Orion starseeds have soul energy that remembers coming from a star system where resources were very hard to come by. So many of the stars and planets in the Orion system did not have the abundance of resources that we take for granted here on Earth. And so you had to scrimp and fight a little harder in the Orion system to get the resources you needed. So an energy that will often be present in Orion starseeds is that resourcefulness, that ability to work with anything that is on hand to make do with whatever you have. So your Orion starseed is going to be the starseed that can MacGyver things, that can make anything work with what is laying around. They are also known to be very clever, very smart, and very practical. So your Orion starseed is very often skilled at figuring out any situation. They are known a lot of times to be the jack of all trades. So they are starseeds who tend to be very multi-talented. So Orion starseeds may be that person in your life or that person you know that's good at everything they try. Now, something that separates Orion starseeds from many of the other starseed races is that they tend to thrive in bureaucracies. They tend to be really good in systems that have a lot of rules and red tape and protocols and procedures. So whereas this type of structure is maddening to most starseeds, including in particular the Pleiadians, the Orions really thrive in structure. So your Orion starseed may be someone who does very well in the corporate environment, where there are a lot of procedures to follow, there are protocols that have to be adhered to. Your Orion starseed is likely to thrive in that environment. They may also be very good in the military, where there are very clear rules, there are hierarchies, there are chains of command, all of the things that so many starseeds absolutely hate is an area where many Orion starseeds shine. So along with this, something else that you may notice with Orion starseeds is that they are great under pressure. So Orion starseeds are someone you want on your team when things are falling apart. They are known to be very goal-oriented, very task-oriented, and very focused on getting the job done. So they tend to be extremely creative, extremely resourceful, and great under pressure. Now, another thing that lets you see the energy of the Orion system in practice is that Orion starseeds, more than many of the other starseed races, tend to be very intolerant of anything that is frivolous, anything that wastes their time. So your Orion starseed will often not be very interested in any form of gossip or drama or anything they consider to be frivolous, anything that wastes their time. You may find that they are extremely impatient with anything like that, anything that is light and fluffy and not productive and on task. So you may find that your Orion starseed does not like to have her time wasted. They also tend to be a little impatient with any form of laziness or stupidity. And again, this goes back to the origins of the system they came from, where your life was kind of on the line all the time. So you can see this focus in Orion starseeds that comes from the energy of the star system they are from. And so Orion starseeds tend to be very on task, very focused, and very goal-oriented, and to not have a ton of patience with anyone who is not on the same page as them. So you will notice a lot of times with Orion starseeds that they are hyper-focused on what needs to be done, and they don't care what anyone else thinks about it. So unlike the Pleiadians, who are notorious people pleasers, the Orions really come in at the other end of the scale. So your Orion starseed is not at all likely to be concerned with what anyone else thinks. In fact, they are often very happy to tell you what you need to be doing. So your Orion starseed is your take charge kind of person. They are not necessarily one of the starseed races that is the peacekeeper or the humanitarian. They are the ones that get things done. And because of this, as you can imagine, Orion starseeds make naturally excellent leaders. They just have an energy that inspires people to follow them because they exude this energy that makes you trust them, that they will get the job done, they will protect you, they will handle the situation. So many Orion starseeds make naturally great leaders, and they tend to have an energy that is very attractive to people. So your Orion starseed may be someone who is very magnetic, that commands attention anywhere they go. So even though they don't care what other people think, Orion starseeds tend to find themselves at the center stage. They tend to find themselves as the center of attention because their energy commands it. And because of this personality that so many Orion starseeds tend to share, Orion starseeds make great activists. Now, we can't say this about all of the starseed races. Some do not care to be the center of attention, do not care for any form of conflict or drama. Not so with the Orions. The Orions have no trouble riling people up, saying what they think, and because of this, they make naturally good activists because they do not mind conflict. They do not mind standing up and bucking the crowd, bucking the trend. They are not into conformity of any kind. So your Orion starseeds have a really magnetic, fascinating energy that is a take no prisoners kind of energy. Something else that you may notice about Orion starseeds is that they are great at problem solving. And again, you can see this tracing back to the system that they come from, where they had to solve problems, solve a lack of resources on a daily basis. You will often see this tendency in Orion starseeds. So when things are going sideways, an Orion starseed is who you want on your team. They are great at thinking outside of the box, at coming up with creative solutions, at taking the position that other people are afraid to take. And again, this is what makes Orion starseeds such powerful and charismatic leaders. They are not afraid to do what needs to be done. Along these lines, they tend to be very inquisitive. So Orion starseeds may be that person you know who asks a million questions, who really wants to get into the details of everything, understand it down to its finest points, and be able to create solutions from that. But on the other hand, with Orion starseeds, you may find they have a complete disinterest in anything that is not a priority to them. So Orion starseeds, you may see a tendency to be kind of all or nothing. So if they are interested in something, they are all in. And if it is something that they do not deem worthy of their time, you may find that they will not give it a single thought. So you may find your Orion starseeds very focused on what interests them and absolutely disinterested in anything else. And because of this tendency to be very detail-oriented, the Orion starseeds are very good critical thinkers. So they tend to be very analytical, very creative, very logical, and also very detail-oriented. So your Orion starseed is going to be looking at the finer points of everything before they commit to it. And all of these traits tend to make Orion starseeds great negotiators, great leaders, and that creativity, that ability to think outside the box also makes Orion starseeds great inventors. So some of our great inventions, some of our breakthroughs in technology come to us courtesy of Orion starseeds. Something else that Orion starseeds tend to demonstrate is a very strong solar plexus energy. So Orion starseeds often, and this certainly goes for the Orion starseeds that I have met, have a very strong sense of personal identity. They know who they are. They are not in any way ashamed of that or backing away from that. So your Orion starseeds tend to have a very strong sense of identity. And along with that, they tend to be masters of willpower. And so this is something that, again, makes Orion starseeds so compelling, is because they have such utter and complete confidence in themselves, in what they stand for, and what they know. And for some starseeds, this is very challenging. It is something that they struggle with all the time. And this is something that comes very naturally to Orion starseeds. So with Orion starseeds, you may see this just very magnetic self-confidence, this absolute fearlessness when it comes to being their authentic self. So Orion starseeds are not ones who are people pleasers. They do not stand in the background or shy away from sharing their opinion. And because of that, they find themselves the center of attention, even when they don't want it, because Orion starseeds just naturally exude such a strong, powerful presence. You can't help but be attracted to them. So something else that you may notice about Orion starseeds is they like to see proof. So if you are trying to convince an Orion starseed of something, if you are trying to persuade them to your point of view, be prepared to prove it. Because for Orion starseeds, the devil is in the details, and they are going to hold you to making sure that every I is dotted, every T is crossed, and they are going to be asking you a million questions. So your Orion starseed is going to be kicking the tires for everything. They are not starseeds who take things on faith or believe what is being told to them. They have excellent discernment skills and are very hard to trick or manipulate. So these are some of the common characteristics that may be seen in Orion starseeds. Again, it doesn't mean that every Orion starseed will have these characteristics. You could be an Orion starseed and not resonate with any of that. So always remember, every starseed is unique, and what resonates with you is what your intuition is guiding you to. So take these or leave these if they resonate with you, and consider them to be trends or generalities rather than absolute rules. So now that we have talked a little bit about some of the common characteristics or personality traits of Orion starseeds, let's talk for a moment about how Orion starseeds deal with being in a physical human body. Because as we have talked about in several of these videos, different starseed races adjust more or less easily to being in a physical body. Some star races have an easier time of it than others do. So for the Orions, something that can be an issue with the physical body is their tendency to hold their emotions inside. So the Orion starseeds, one of the struggles they can have with the physical body is by bottling up their emotions inside. They can tend to have manifestations of that in the physical body, whether that is in the form of inflammation, whether that is in the form of skin disorders like rashes. They may suffer from manifestations of a tendency to bottle up their emotions. So many starseed races have some things that may go sideways with their physical body. This is one of those things that Orion starseeds in particular may want to keep an eye on, because Orion starseeds have a tendency to keep the emotions inside. They are not like our Pleiadian starseed friends who put their emotions on display, share their every emotion, every thought and feeling. The Orions are kind of on the other end of the scale and have a tendency to hold those emotions inside in ways that can have a negative reaction from their bodies. So that is kind of the main thing that jumps out that Orion starseeds may want to keep an eye on as far as the physical body is concerned. So now that we've talked about some of the characteristics of Orion starseeds, let's take a moment and look at some of the struggles that Orion starseeds may face as they interact and deal with this incarnation into the Earth game. One of the main things that can be a challenge for Orion starseeds is a tendency toward being a bit aloof and a bit arrogant. So Orion starseeds, because they are so confident in their opinions, so willing to say what they think, they can sometimes cross that line to being what other people consider to be aloof, arrogant, critical. All of these are words that come up when we talk about Orion starseeds. Now, again, Orion starseeds are not likely to be concerned about this because, as we discussed, they are starseeds who tend to be supremely confident in themselves and really not that concerned with what anyone else thinks. But this is something that does come up when the conversation of Orion starseeds is on the table. So Orion starseeds may want to keep an eye on how they come across to others, but there's a good chance they don't care. And along these lines, Orion starseeds can come off to many people as being a bit aggressive. They're often described as being a lot. And so Orion starseeds can be a little intimidating to other people. And again, this is something that the Orion starseed probably doesn't care about. And that's completely fine. Many star races wish they had that trait, but Orion starseeds can oftentimes be viewed as being a little critical, judgmental, and a lot, like sharing more than people really want to know. They may be happy to tell other people what they should be doing. And again, they can be very impatient with anything frivolous, anything that wastes their time, anything that they don't consider to be of value. Orion starseeds can be very dismissive of anything that does not make it on their personal scale of priority. So again, this is something that you may notice in Orion starseeds. And again, it may be something that Orion starseeds are perfectly fine with. And finally, one thing that Orion starseeds may struggle with, and we touched on this earlier, is the tendency to hold their emotions inside. And the way this can manifest negatively in an Orion starseed's life is with trouble in relationships, because Orion starseeds may have a tendency to approach relationships from a purely mental or intellectual perspective. So they may tend to value the emotional side of the relationship much lower than the other person in the relationship. So because of that, that can cause Orion starseeds to struggle in relationships because they don't value the connection. They may not value the sharing of emotions. They may be very dismissive of their partner's needs and concerns. So this can play out as a source of trouble for many Orion starseeds. And again, it goes back to Orion starseeds value what they value, and what they don't value, they tend to give no attention to at all. So if you are an Orion starseed, or if you know one, and certainly if you are in a relationship with one, this is something to keep your eye on. The Orion starseed may need to be reminded that the opinions of others matter too. And this may not be something that comes naturally to every Orion starseed. So supporting them in this, reminding them that emotions are a valid part of life, can go a long way if you are in a relationship or friends with an Orion starseed. Because again, this may not be something that your average Orion starseed values. So let me know in the comments, what is your experience with Orion starseeds? And if you are an Orion starseed, let me know in the comments, what have I left off this list? What do you consider to be your strengths? And what are some of the things that you see Orion starseeds struggling with? As we do this, as we share this, we build and strengthen the entire starseed community. So make sure you drop that in the comment box. And while you're down there, don't forget, hit the subscribe button and the like button if you haven't done that yet. So I hope this has helped you to understand Orion starseeds a little better. And hopefully you will have a chance to meet and experience one of these really unique and remarkable starseeds, and you'll know a little better how to relate to them. I hope this has helped you. I'll see you soon. Bye.